see here. I'd like to call the meeting to order for the Public Works Committee on April 25th, 2017. First order of business is roll call and determination of a quorum. Brenda?
Doyle? Estes? Solomon? Drew?
Here.
Nordstrom?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Now is the time for general public comment, a time for members of the public to discuss or express concerns to the committee on any issue not limited to items on the agenda. Action will not be taken at the meeting on any issue not on the agenda except by placement on the agenda by unanimous vote of the aldermen present. We have no public comment, so public comment is closed. Okay. And now we're on to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Make a motion to approve.
Solomon makes a motion and Nordstrom seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. So now we're on to consent calendar for items, let's see here, 2 through 24. And we have Jason Solomon, who... Jason? Oh, let's see here.
Punch his name.
Oh, punch his name. Okay, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I could pull item number 14, please.
Any others? Seeing none, I'd like to get a motion to approve the remainder of the balance from 2 through 24 with the exception of 14.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Motion passes. Move on to item number 14,
And the crowd goes wild.
which is a license agreement with MFP Mid-America Shopping Centers, LLC for access to property at 2001 West Main Street for the purpose of tree removal. And we'll go to Alderman Solomon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I could direct this question to Dale Tech, please. Dale, so this is a property that's in the general area of Bacon Park, and my question is, whose responsibility are those trees? Is it the property owners? Is it the cities? Can you give us some more background on that, please?
I'll do my best. There was a flood control project constructed in 1980 along Rapid Creek, and as part of that, the city agreed to maintain this flood control project. So it's the city's responsibility in this area to keep the vegetation in check, if you will. Recent inspection by the Corps of Engineers identified that vegetation needed to be removed so we can adequately convey our flood flows through the area. So it's the city's responsibility. It is on private property, thus the necessity for this license agreement.
Okay. About when are we looking at removing these trees?
City forces will be doing this. I'm assuming once we get all the license agreement in place, they'll be working on it over the course of the next 6 to 9 months.
Okay. Are we utilizing our Parks Department for that?
No, our city stormwater crew.
Okay. They're going to do it. Okay. That's all I got for now. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, after you approve, I have a question.
Oh, okay. Madam Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, move to approve.
Second.
Motion approved by Richie Nordstrom, second by Jason Solomon. Richie, you still have the floor.
I have no further questions.
I do have a question,
Okay.
so if I had a point of privilege, I guess. Dale, who makes the decision on these trees? Do neighbors complain? Do you go out and look? How is it determined?
It's determined by the Corps of Engineers sends a group out to inspect the levee system, I think, every second year. So between them and city staff, we look at what trees will affect the flood capacity of the project and determine whether or not they should be removed. So it's a city staff and Corps of Engineers staff decision to go in and look at the vegetation.
All right, thank you. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. And we're on to item number 25. And we have a public comment from James Warren. So, Mr. Warren, if you'd like to approach the podium and identify yourself, and please give us your address.
Madam Chairman, committee members, I'd just like to thank you for allowing me to speak today. I'm James Warren, an engineer with KTM Design Solutions. And I am before you today to ask you to reconsider city staff's decision to deny the exception request to install utilities in Bristol Court in Buffalo Crossing, different than what is shown in Figure 3.6 of the IDCM. And I may need a little help here knowing how to run this thing, but
Is our AV staff available? Okay, there's Daryl.
so what I'm showing here is Figure 3-6 of the Infrastructure Design Criteria Manual. And the reason we feel that the utility should be installed different than this is the figure here shows an inline cul-de-sac bulb, and what we're proposing for the roadway is actually an offset bulb, which results in just some different design challenges and stuff. And I'd like to take city staff's comments kind of one at a time here. So the first comment that city staff had, and the reason for denying this, was that in accordance with ordinance 13.04.270, services need to be installed at near right angles to the roadway and cannot cross adjoining property lines. And per our layout, we're generally conforming to the right angles. As it being a cul-de-sac, it naturally lends itself to being a little bit more of a challenge to come straight out from the property line to the utility. And then, as you can see, we're not crossing any of the adjoining property lines. Shown here, and then up there. The next comment that city staff had was that we are crossing projected lot lines as they extend out to the center of the cul-de-sac. And that is true, but even in criteria manual figure, that happens just due to the nature of how a cul-de-sac is laid out. And I can show you, put that up the right way. I've circled the locations where that just naturally happens. And here, and there. And then Mr. Johnson also made the comment that our utility, one of the services, is crossing multiple other services. And I don't take exception to that comment, and I believe we can fix that in the design just by changing the location of where our sanitary sewer stub and our water service stub is located to the lot. And that takes place right here. We have the sanitary coming across and crossing a water. By changing location of that sanitary stub to the other side of the lot, we can eliminate one of those crossings. And that would still be in conjunction with very similar to figure 3.6. The next comment was, the long service length of one of our sanitary sewer services, and that was this one here as it extends up. And we did review that in our design and checked to see that we would be able to maintain minimum slope on that sewer service, and we're not exceeding the length where we would have to have a clean out in city right away or anything like that. And I thank you for your time, and I'll be available for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. Yeah, please stand by. I think you'll have questions. So we're on to item number 25, and I'd like to know if the councilmen present have questions. Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just kind of reading through the staff's notes here one more time. But Mr. Warren, could you come back up to the podium? And if you've got your drawing handy and you could display that again. Curious about a couple of different things on your, what you would refer to as an offset bulb. If I'm understanding your request correctly, about a second manhole, is that correct so far? Am I understanding it correct?
Yes, as part of, and I can show you what city staff here had requested as well. City staff had requested we add an additional manhole here so we can move the manhole at the end of the bulb up to be in line with the cul-de-sac, which is how it's shown on figure 3.6. But in figure 3.6, the sanitary sewer is coming straight up the road and comes right to the end where that manhole can be located right at the center of that cul-de-sac. And with our design, our sewer is coming, per IDCM, we're keeping our manholes in the center line of the roadway. There's a manhole actually back here, and then we can come down here and we keep it in the center of the driving lane as you go around that cul-de-sac. And to be able to have it at the center of that cul-de-sac, you'd have to add another manhole, which is adding infrastructure that really, in our opinion, provides marginal benefit.
What I'm understanding also is if the sanitary sewer line is offset, some of the property owners' lines will have to be extended. Am I correct on that?
Not necessarily extended, it results in a longer service to their property since it's not in the center of that cul-de-sac.
And then others will be shorter, obviously.
Correct.
And so the major concern that I have on your example is some of the lines will be longer, and then if there is an issue that develops later on, a plug in that sanitary sewer line on the private side, what I'm seeing is a potential of a cost increase for the property owners. And just in case they've got an issue within their sanitary sewer line.
Yes, and there is no denying that the sanitary service lengths would be disproportionate between the property lines, but that also could be where you choose to put your house. I mean, you may build your house further back and you have a longer sanitary sewer line. It's not going to be something that is hidden from a property owner. It's something they would know coming into the property.
Understand that part of it, and it's also if property owners are paying attention during closing, they'll discover that as well. I understand that. However, most people will not be aware of that issue, so that's my concern. And whereas what the staff is recommending seems reasonable, because the second reason that I'm supporting the staff's recommendation is because, as you know, traffic does revolve around the cul-de-sac. Even in an offset, most of the traffic is going to be driven over top of that manhole, and that's the other concern I have.
Well, then with our layout, the manhole's actually centered in where the traffic would be driving, so it wouldn't be in the wheel path. We've centered it in that drive lane as the criteria manual requests.
Okay, I was misunderstanding that on your proposal because I saw it on the offset, so.
Yeah, and it's offset in the bulb as it's not in the center.
Yes.
But this would be the driving path around, or either way, and we've centered that so the wheel tracks would be on either side of that manhole.
Understand the intent, yeah. If I may direct another question to Dale Tech, please.
Of course.
Mr. Tech, you've heard some of the responses that we've been given so far. Any thoughts on this, shall I say the offset, or I'll call it the wheel alignment where that manhole is set, and if you have any other additional comments on this? Okay, very good.
In regards to your inquiry about the location of this manhole, Mr. Warren is saying that's in the middle of the driving lane. However, in a cul-de-sac, people have various turning radiuses to their vehicles. I mean, there's a possibility that they're going to drive over it in that location. My biggest concern about this is this long sewer service line here, where it taps the main, is more or less out in front of this property. So in the future, if there's an issue and they have to dig this up, they're digging up in front of the neighbor's house, and the neighbors typically don't like that. We've received many complaints in the past, conditions just like this, and that's why the criteria is written the way it is so that those services are generally out in the middle of the street where the person connects to the sewer main, and the neighbors are not affected by future repairs to that.
Mr. Tech, just to follow up on that question, if I understand what you're saying, please correct me. In the scenario that you described, we would be having more or less two houses that would be interrupted, whereas if it was in the center, more than likely it would be just one house if it had to be dug up.
I won't say how many houses will be affected, but by putting it in the center minimizes that effect to adjoining properties.
Understand. Thank you. I'll yield.
Thank you. We go to Alderman Solomon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll have a question for both of you, if you don't mind. I'll start with you, Dale. Do we have examples of this offset bulb cul-de-sac layout elsewhere in the city?
I'm sure there are examples of that, and if you're going to follow up with a question of how the sewer's installed, I couldn't say right off.
All right. It's not common though, right? I assume.
It's not common, correct. A standard cul-de-sac bulb is the standard, and I think 95% of them in the city are probably the standard type.
Okay. And James, if I could have you. So is it significant difficulty putting that in the center of that cul-de-sac in terms of the system as a whole?
It's just the addition of a manhole, and then as you can see on Ted's comments here, that the water main needs to be addressed as it will now cross the sanitary. You either, per the criteria manual, you either have to loop around as shown on this side, and then on this side you have the option of crossing the sanitary line and encasing the water main.
Okay. So it just adds some cost to the project.
It adds cost, and it adds, if you were doing the loop around, it adds potential points of issue in the future, because typically your water main, you see issues at fittings and valves. Now, encasement, you're adding an encasement that necessarily wouldn't have to be there.
Okay. Well, I don't know about how everybody else feels. I think for right now, I'm probably going to uphold the staff's recommendation. I might need to think about it a little bit more before Monday night's meeting as well. But because I think the equity to the other property owners is a concern. I think Dale brought up a good point. If there's ever work that has to be done, living in a cul-de-sac, I can tell you, people don't, you think people are just going to drive on the outside of the cul-de-sac, but that's not necessarily how it goes. And so I do have some concerns there as well. So I can't make the motion right now, but I'm just passing that on. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Alderman Nordstrom.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll move to uphold staff's denial of this request.
We have a motion by Nordstrom to uphold the denial and a second by Solomon.
Madam Chair?
You can continue.
Mr. Warren, right now I'm in the same condition as Alderman Solomon is. I'm looking for some other compromises, but right now with what we've got in front of us, I'm still open for some other changes, but right now I'm going to be supporting the staff's recommendation because of future costs. And that's primarily where I'm at. Thank you.
No, thank you.
I'd like a question too, please, if I could, Mr. Warren.
Sorry, I'll just stay here.
Yeah, I prepared as not to be the chair of this meeting, so I do have a question. And in fact, Mr. Alderman Solomon and I were talking about this before we started the meeting, that we're not engineers and we kind of have to play that part up here. And so I have a question for you, just to, if you could kind of help me with this, that the sewer lines had a minimum slope. What does that mean? It's almost horizontal then, or what do you got?
Are you speaking to the main or to the service?
I'm not sure. You tell me.
I guess for this project, I guess we're at both. The main, due to the grade of the street, is only at 0.5% per standards, your sewer main for an 8-inch has to be installed at no less than, I believe it's 0.44%, and our plan is at 0.5. So we're within design criteria. You know, the service, typically the minimum you install service is at 1%, and that's what we've planned for our services coming from the main to the property line.
So in your estimation, that you've taken care of that problem, you're good with the slope,
Correct. Yep, we're
within guidelines?
Yep, we're within all noted criteria. I mean, with our grade, we do have a previous exception that was approved. We do not have the 2 foot per second requirement that the city has for the velocity in the main. Most of that is due to the size of this cul-de-sac. There just isn't sufficient dwelling units to have enough volume in that main to achieve the 2 foot per second. So we have a previously approved exception for that.
All right, well, you answered my question, thank you.
Thank you.
The motion on the floor is to approve the appeal of the denial. Uphold the appeal of the denial. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Move to adjourn.
Councilman Nordstrom moves to adjourn,
I second that motion.
and Councilman Solomon, seconds that. All in favor?
Aye.
We stand adjourned.